من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We continue 418 Sunday, October the 28th, 2018. The Gregorian calendar, which agrees with the 17th of Safar, or the month of the Hijri calendar, the 17th of Safar, Aam 1440, the year 1440 after the migration of the Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. On this lesson that we continue in Buloogh Al-Maraam by the great illustrious Imam Al-Hafiz Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Shihab Al-Asqalani, which is known by Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar. Al-Hafiz Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani rahimahullah, who died 852 بعد الهجرة, who died 852 after the hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam. We continue Buloogh Al-Maraam in the chapter. Generally, it's still the chapter of Kitab al-Nikah. Kitab al-Nikah. We continue in the chapter after we completed the part of how we inaugurated the chapter with the hadith of, where is this? No. The chapter of Ishrat al-Nisa. The chapter of living with the women in kindness. As we said, that the word Ishra with the Ain, or Mu'ashara, means to deal with them or to live with them in kindness, or good treatment with them in kindness. So we said that the chapter inaugurated, or the great Imam inaugurated the chapter by certain narrations. Just hold up. We completed the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, and the hadith of Ibn Abbas, of the type of intimacy which is impermissible in the light of Islam, and what is, as we'll give more details on a later occasion of what is, as we know, but anything beyond what was mentioned, that we know that it is permissible except for what was mentioned in these narrations. For number one, as far as the intimacy with the women, as far as in the anus, and also likewise while she's on her mints, meaning in the actual private part, as I'm taking consideration certain children, as far as in the private part, while a woman is on her monthly or her mints or monthly cycle. But beyond that, as we know, what is permissible in light of if it's in a marriage, but out of the marriage contract is also likewise, which is which is also illicit and not legislated, and it's also considered a crime in Islam, and it's a major sin. So after the great Imam that he started this chapter with those two narrations, we continue likewise in the chapter. As we move to the next hadith on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu ardah. If everyone looks in their books, on the authority of Abu Hurairah عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فلا يؤذي جاره واستوصوا بالنساء خيرا فإنهن خلقن من ضلع وإن أعوج شيء في الضلع أعلاه فإن ذهبت تقيمه كسرته وإن تركته لم يزل أعوج فاستوصوا بالنساء خيرا. الحديث متفق عليه. The authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, it says that whoever believes in Allah in the last day, he said, do not let him harm his neighbor. Do not let him harm his neighbor. And then the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave his wasiyah, or his advice to man, or to the Muslimin. He said, فَاسْتَوْسُوا بِالنِّسَاءِ خَيْرًا, meaning accept this advice of treating women kindly, or I advise you to treat them in kindness, with good. These narrations in the back. He said, for verily the women were created from the rib of Adam. And the most crooked part of the rib is the upper part. The most crooked part of the rib is the upper part. And if you go to straighten it, you will break it. And if you left it alone, it will continue to be crooked. So I advise you, and I give you the advice with the women of treating them with good. And another narration, listen to Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said, فَإِنِ اسْتَمْتَعْتَ بِهَا اسْتَمْتَعْتَ بِهَا وَبِهَا عِوَجْ. Is there something going on the sister side? It's a narration. Do everyone know what the narrations are? Do they see it? Or they don't see it? Hey, you want some of this? Here, drink a little bit of this. Just a little bit, not a lot. I don't want you staying up till tomorrow. No, so you said you found it? Oh, so you found the narration? Okay. So it says, if you left it alone, it will continue to be crooked. Not too tasty. It will continue to remain or will stay crooked. So I advise you to treat the women with kindness. In the other narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, and if you enjoy her, meaning as far as in marriage, then he says, istamta'ta biha wa biha iwaj. He says that you take, of course, that enjoyment and happiness with her in the marriage, but you enjoy it in a manner in which she has that crookedness. And if you go to try to straighten it out, you will break her. You will break her. And breaking her is divorcing her. So the message of Allah ﷺ, as we know, started off with the narration on the authority of, like we said, the great Sahabi, Abu Hurairah. And we know Abu Hurairah was his kunya. We know Abu Hurairah, his real name was what, everyone? AbdurRahman ibn Sakhar al-Dawsi al-Yamani. That was Abu Hurairah's real name. It was AbdurRahman ibn Sakhar Sakhar al-Dawsi al-Yamani. And we know Abu Hurairah was originally from Al-Yemen. He was originally from Al-Yemen. There's a lot of them Sahaba, the original tribe of them, they emanated from Al-Yemen. He says, in the message of Allah, he said, whoever believes in Allah and the last day, do not let him harm his neighbor. Do not let him harm his neighbor. So the first part of the hadith, it says, whoever believes in Allah. For the first thing we want to start is the meaning of Iman. So the message of Allah ﷺ gave the foundation. The foundation is that in order for one's deeds to be accepted, then he has to have Iman. Meaning that even if you stayed away from all of these actions, meaning here that's mentioned in this hadith, if everyone looks, as far as treating a woman kind and having kindness and good treatment with your neighbor, all of that is irrelevant if you do not have Iman. So the message of Allah started with what is the foundation. What is the foundation that every good act is built upon? And if that foundation isn't there, then it is invalid. It is invalid. As Iman, the message of Allah ﷺ, or as we know, the meaning of Al-Iman, I don't want to get to the definitions of Al-Iqrar, that means Al-Iqrar. That Iman here does not mean just the belief in the existence of Allah and that's it, as some people would think. Rather, the meaning of Iman is the Iman that necessitates acceptance of revelation, of what was sent down to Muhammad ﷺ. And also al-id'an, meaning also likewise servitude and subservience. In accordance with that Iman. So it's not just belief in the existence of Allah. So a person would say, whoever believes in Allah. a person would say, I believe there's in Allah, but it necessitates also that one accepts the revelation and being subservient to what was sent with Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Meaning that one has to also believe that Muhammad was the messenger of Allah and the last prophet and the last messenger to humanity. Or else none of the actions are valid. No matter if you treat a woman kindly for 1,000 years straight. If one does not believe in Allah, meaning accepting wholeheartedly what Allah sent the message of Allah with, and not accepting his guidance and believing firmly that he was a messenger and a prophet sent, then none of these affairs are valid, none of them. Meaning you treating your neighbor kindly or treating a woman kindly, or vice versa, or a woman treating her husband kindly. All of those affairs are irrelevant. They're irrelevant and they have no validity. Why? Because the foundation isn't there, which is what? Iman in Allah and in the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Then you'll find in this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he paired up Iman with the day of resurrection, or the final day. So notice in the narration it says, Al-Yawm al-Akhir, whoever believes in Allah and the last day. And the last day. What does it mean, the last day? Meaning the day of resurrection. The day where everyone is resurrected and will be judged and will be held accountable for what they did in this world. Not only what they did in this world, but even what they believed in. Because a lot of us think accountability is just from our actions. It's not just that. Rather, the first thing that will be tested on the day of resurrection is our belief system. That has to be looked at and examined. Then after that, meaning the foundation of what I just said for the past 5 minutes, that will be examined first. Then, if that is correct and that foundation is sound, then Allah will what? Allah will judge the actions of the people. So, to pass the first test on the day of resurrection, one has to be sound in his belief system. His belief will be examined first. Then the deeds after that. So notice that the Prophet ﷺ in this narration, he described the day of resurrection as being the last day. He called it Al-Yawm al-Akhir, meaning the day of resurrection. Why was it considered Akhir? Akhir, meaning last. Why? Why, everyone? Because there's no day after it. There's no day, meaning in this dunya, in this world, in this place called Dar al-Ibtila, the place of trials and tribulations. There will be no day after that, after the day of resurrection of this dunya. You'll find that the Messenger of Allah coupled faith with the last day. Why, everyone? And I think it's self-explanatory that belief in Allah necessitates actions. Necessitates actions. Meaning one doing it out of desiring what Allah has prepared of a tremendous reward. That's why a lot of us, we do these actions, inshallah. We're doing it because we're looking forward to the great reward that Allah has prepared for salah, for siyam, for teaching tawheed, teaching sunnah, and also likewise for the people attending and learning. We're doing it ultimately to seek the reward with Allah and His pleasure, because Allah loves what we're doing right now. Rather, it's one of the most honorable acts is to learn ilm al-nafi', is to learn beneficial knowledge. That is also from the greatest types of ways that the servant draws close to Allah, is to take knowledge. That's a form of ibadah. Rather, it's the best forms of ibadah. So iman with Allah necessitates actions, as we said, of desiring what Allah has prepared of reward. Because if a person believes in Allah on the last day, he will carry out acts desiring what Allah has prepared of reward. And he will do acts likewise at the same time out of fear of the punishment of Allah. طيب. How is this connected in the hadith? If everyone looks in their books. So the message of Allah started off with the foundation here. Then he alayhi salatu wasalam, started talking about the actions. Which is where's the actions, everyone, in the hadith if you look in it? Do not harm your neighbor. Isn't that an action? What's the type of action? Even though it's considered imtina' or intiha' anil muharramat wal manhiyat, even though it's refraining from doing or committing some type of harm, but still it's talking about some type of act, whether it be doing an act or abstaining from a certain act. Here the Messenger of Allah is giving a warning to abstain from a certain act, meaning if you fear Allah, you desire His reward, and you love Him, and you truly believe what He has sent down, then now we want you to bear the fruits of that. From those fruits that it bears is actions. What is the actions? Here in this hadith, which is abstaining from harming your neighbor. Abstaining from harming your neighbor. And also likewise, treating women kindly. It's another type of act. So is it clear so far? Does everyone follow me? G. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after he laid down the foundation, and he gave an incentive for why we do certain acts, meaning that we believe in Allah, we love or we look forward to what He's prepared of reward, and we fear His punishment, and that is the foundation. Then the Messenger of Allah gave us another type of reason that would be an incentive for us to do certain acts and abstain from certain acts, which is the day of resurrection. I mean, if you truly believe in these two affairs, then what is to follow of actions? Then carry it out if it's a command, and abstain from it if it's a prohibition, of course. So then the Messenger of Allah in this hadith, what was the first type of act that he commanded? He said, do not harm your neighbor. Do not harm your neighbor. This right here shows the beauty of Islam and the beauty of Islam. And it's not a barbaric religion as a lot of people and a lot of the non-Muslims have broadcasted and propagated in their advertisements in their different methods and means of broadcasting, how they try to manifest the religion as if it's barbaric, or it's helter-skelter, or it's a bunch of chaos. The message of Allah said, firstly, let one not harm his neighbor. Do not harm his neighbor. As we know, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that neighbors, that they break down into three types. For number one, you have a neighbor that is from your relatives, he's Muslim, and he lives close to you. He lives right next door to you. In certain areas you'll find that, especially in the Muslim countries where families are very close. You'll find that they'll live in the same area or right next to each other. They'll build houses right next to each other. So now, that person has three types of rights. The rights of him being your family member, the rights of him being Muslim, and the rights of him being your neighbor. So he has three rights over you. If he lives next to you, of course, or close proximity to where you reside. Then you have the second type of neighbor. You have the second type of neighbor who is Muslim. He's not your relative, but he's Muslim, and he lives he lives close to you. Meaning he's your neighbor. He's Muslim and he's your neighbor. So now he has two rights over you. Him being your neighbor, and also likewise him being Muslim. You need another one? Go ahead and run and get another one. You go ahead. Ask Amir for a pen. You need another one? All right, go ahead. Then you have this third type, who's not your relative, nor is he Muslim. It could be a non-Muslim. He still has a right over you. He still has a right over you. And you'll find that Ahl Ilm say that he has what they call Haqqul Jiwar. Haqqul Jiwar. Meaning the right of him being your neighbor. The right of him being your neighbor. So even if he's non-Muslim, you still have to give a type of right to him. There's a lot of people think just because a person is non-Muslim, or he's my neighbor, I don't have to treat him nice, and I don't have to I don't have to give any respect to him. He's a non-Muslim, kafir, khalas. No. If he's your neighbor, he has a right over you, even if he is a Muslim. And that right is what they call Haqqul Jiwar. Haqqul Jiwar. The right of him being your neighbor. And that goes back to the ayah, Allah Ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa. In 36, Allah Ta'ala says in his book, as he starts, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala starts with his rights first. He says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهِ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah and do not set any partners up with him, which is the greatest of rights. Then Allah Ta'ala starts with his rights. Then secondly, after that, he lays down the rights of the people, who you're supposed to treat with kindness and respect. Then he says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى والجار ذي الجنب والجار ذي الجنب والصاحب بالجنب وابن السبيل وما ملكت أيمانكم. So then Allah Ta'ala starts off with his rights. Then he starts to talk about who deserves the greatest of respect and reverence from the rights of the people. Then he says, treating your parents with excellence. So after Allah gave and spoke about his rights, he spoke about the greatest of people from your families who deserves reverence and the most utmost respect after his right, which is having excellence with one's parents. So how can one say that this religion is a religion of chaos? The pen doesn't work? Try to grab another one if it doesn't work. I think I have one in my office. You can run in my office and get another one. What's wrong? It doesn't work? It doesn't work? Okay. Having excellent with his parents. Then the message of Allah, and then Allah Ta'ala says, وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى, meaning those who are relatives in your family. After that. Then the orphans. Then those who are impoverished. And then Allah speaks about your neighbor. وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنْبِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. Then Allah talks about all the different types of neighbors you're supposed to have excellence with in your treatment. He says, meaning the neighbor that that's your relative at the same time. Just the three categories we just mentioned. Then Allah mentions that in the last part of the ayah. The three categories. The message of Allah gave the best of examples, where we know that he had a Jew who was his neighbor, and he visited his child before he died, or when he was real sick, the neighbor who was a Jew, and his child was sickly. He was sick. And you'll find that this hadith, the narration shows that the Jew knew that he was the messenger of Allah, 100%. To the point where he even said on his deathbed, he said to him, "Ati' Abul Qasim." He said, "Obey Abul Qasim," meaning become Muslim. "Ati' Abul Qasim." So the messenger of Allah used to visit his neighbors, and he used to treat his neighbors with kindness. That was before the Jews were exiled, after they betrayed and they became perfidious in their dealings with him, and they started to plot against. But before that, they used to be the Jews that used to occupy Medina before they were exiled. They were exiled after they tried to plot and tried to assassinate the messenger of Allah, of course. But before that, they were in the area. And the messenger of Allah had good dealings with them. So these narrations to show what, everyone? That as far as one being his neighbor is of these three categories that we just mentioned, that all of them have rights. And the third one shows clearly that even if he's a non-Muslim, he deserves some type of good treatment, of respect, which will be a form of da'wah, of calling him to the religion of Al-Islam, and it will be an incentive for him to embrace it. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? Is everyone with me? Taib. The next affair. The Messenger of Allah said, "Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, do not let him harm his neighbor." There's another narration, and I want everyone to be attentive to of what I'm about to mention. It says in another narration, it says, "Wallahi la yu'min, wallahi la yu'min, wallahi la yu'min." فقالوا من هو يا رسول الله قال الذي لا يأمن جاره بوائقه. The Messenger of Allah said 3 times, he does not believe, he does not believe, he does not believe. And he said of who? He says that the one that his neighbor is not secure from his harm, from his bawa'iqahu, meaning his extreme evil, of course, or some type of harm that he would cause him. Taib. Number one, we want to break this hadith down and connect it with this narration, which is in everyone's books. That it breaks down the first in 2 affairs that are important, that we want everyone to be attentive of. I'm about to mention now. First thing is the Messenger of Allah negated Iman here in this narration. And he said it 3 times. He said, Wallahi. And not only did he negate it, he even said, Wallahi. He swore by Allah. I'm asking the sisters right now, if a person now that harms his neighbor, based upon what you will understand of this narration, you would think that one left the fold of Islam. Right or wrong? He said, Wallahi la yu'min. I swear by Allah, he does not believe. That's what one think if he read this narration and he was not taught properly. He was not cultivated properly with the proper aqidah. He would take this text, run with it, and declare that a person, for example, that harmed his neighbor, he's a non-Muslim, he's a kafir, and he deserves to be killed. That's the problem here. That's the problem what we're speaking about now. Type. So now, these type of narrations, sisters, how do we understand them? How? For number one, all these narrations that you see, the negation of faith in narrations, which is mentioned after it, a major sin does not mean that Iman is nullified. It does not mean that. It means that he fell into an affair or he committed a crime that will render his faith incomplete, not invalid. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? His faith is incomplete. What's the dalil for that? The dalil for that, you will find that no one from the Salaf or the Sahaba or who came after them understood any of these narrations that if a person, for example, harmed his neighbor, that he's left the fold of Islam. No one mentioned that. No one has gave that explanation, nor did anyone from the Salaf mention that. So that is our evidence and proof. Is, number one, the Sahaba, how the companions understood these narrations. And you will never find that there's any Sahabi that declared a person to be a non-Muslim because he harmed his neighbor. Rather, he fell into a major sin. Rather, you'll find in a hadith that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that even Jibreel came to me. He said, مَا زَالَ جِبْرِيلُ يُوصِينِي بِالْجَارِ حَتَّى ظَنَنْتُ أَنَّهُ سَيُوَرِّثُهُ. He said that Angel Jibreel came to me, he said, and he kept telling me and advising me with kind treatment of my neighbors, to the point where I thought that he was going to make them inherit from me. Meaning he was going to make them from my inheritors. That he said, I thought that he was going to make them from my inheritors, from those who inherit from me. So the right of a neighbor is tremendous. However, if one harms a neighbor, does it now necessitate that he's left the fold of Islam? No. But however, when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ mentioned here, Wallahi la yu'min, he's putting emphasis on showing and manifesting and elucidating towards what, everyone? That your faith will be rendered incomplete if you do this. If you harm your neighbor. Your iman and your faith will be affected until it will be rendered incomplete. Another example of this in authentic sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ said, just to give a little bit more insight, the Messenger of Allah in another narration that everyone knows, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believe, or none of you believe until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Is this hadith negating faith and saying that if you don't want for your brother what you want for yourself, khalas, you're a kafir? Huh? Is that the meaning of the hadith? Huh? Is that the meaning of the narration, everyone? No, it isn't. So keep in consideration the i'tiqad of Ahlul Sunnah, that these narrations mean the negation of what? What they call, and I want everyone to listen closely to what I'm saying. It's the negation of mutlaqul iman, not al-iman al-mutlaq. What am I talking about? It's a negation of mutlaqul iman, meaning al-iman al-kamil. It's negation of completeness of faith, not the origin of faith. Write that down. That's very important. These narrations here is the negation of mutlaqul iman, not al-iman al-mutlaq. Excuse me, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry. Astaghfirullah to be late. It's the opposite. It's the negation of al-iman al-mutlaq, not mutlaqul iman. It's the negation of completeness of faith, not the origin or the foundation of faith. What's the difference? The difference of completeness is that if it's not complete, then it's what, everyone? It's incomplete. The foundation of it, meaning if that foundation of it is removed, that means that he's not even a what? Not even a Muslim. So you understand the difference? So these narrations here are the negation of what, everyone? Al-Iman al-Mutlaq. Al-Iman al-Mutlaq. Faith being complete. Not the origin or the asl, or the origin of faith. The reason why I'm talking about this, so when you read these type of texts, you do not fall into takfir. You will not fall into declaring Muslims to be non-Muslim, because this is the reason why the deviant sects have manifested, because of their misconstruedness and their misunderstanding of these texts. They start going out now and declaring Muslims Muslims to be non-Muslims and shedding their blood and wreaking havoc in society because of their corruptive ideology and their corrupted belief and their misunderstanding of these texts. The Messenger of Allah was just putting emphasis of showing that your faith will be rendered incomplete if you harm your neighbor. Meaning it's a major sin. Meaning these people deserve respect and treatment of kindness. It's to put emphasis, not to negate it. Another example of that, brothers and sisters, for example, another example of this is the hadith that we know. When the Messenger of Allah said, and I want to ask, and I'm going to test everyone again. The narration which is in the Sahihain, which is in Al-Bukhari Muslim, where he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, where he says, a-zani alladhi yazni laysa, excuse me, everyone, I'm sorry. الذي لا يؤمن الزاني وهو يزني وهو مؤمن ولا يشرب الخمر حين يشربها وهو مؤمن ولا يسرق السارق حين يسرق وهو مؤمن. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said that the one fornicating or committing adultery is not a believer when they're fornicating, or the one who's drinking alcohol or intoxicants at the time that they're drinking it is not a believer. And the one who steals at the time when he's stealing it, he's not a believer. So the message of Allah in these narrations are negating Iman. How do we understand these hadith, brothers and sisters? How? Based upon what you just wrote in your books just now, which is what? The Prophet ﷺ is negating what? Al-Iman al-Mutlaq, not Mutlaqul Iman. He's negating completeness of faith, not the what? Not the foundation or the origin of faith. He's saying that the people who commit these acts have fell into major sins where they have rendered their faith incomplete. Because these are major sins. Fornicating, adultery, homosexuality, also drinking intoxicants, stealing, all of them are major sins and they're dangerous. But however, did the message of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, is he negating the foundation of faith, everyone? Is that what he's negating? He's not negating that. You'll find that the Ahl Ilm saying that these are called, what are they called? You'll find that some of them call this kufrun amali. Some of the Salaf used to call this. These type of acts or these sins, their disbelief of the actions, not of faith. Not of faith. Faith will remove you from sins. However, kufr of the actions will not remove you from the fold of Islam. Rather, render your faith incomplete. A person would say, what do you mean? I'm going to give another example. For example, we know the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that the signs of a hypocrite are what? 3. In another narration, he had another 2, so make it complete 5. He said that the signs of a hypocrite are 5. Basically, to sum it up, he says if he speaks, he what? He lies. إذا حدث كذب وإذا وعد أخلف وإذا تمن خان وإذا خاصم فجر وإذا عاهد غدر. To the end of the narration, right? That the Messenger of Allah, for example, he said that the signs of a hypocrite are 3, and another he added another 2 to make it 5 totally. He says if he speaks, he lies. And if he's given a trust, he betrays it. And if he promises, he breaks it. And if he argues in a very unacceptable manner. Very, very, if you want to say, all the different types of ways that a person can argue by raising their voice and cursing and using unacceptable language and all the different types of things that are unacceptable when a person is disagreeing with one. And he says, إِذَا عَاهَدَ غَدَرْ وَإِذَا خَاصَمَ فَجَرْ. And if he makes a pact or treaty, he betrays it. طيب. You'll find that Ahl Ilm say that these type of acts are nifaq of the actions. The hypocrisy of the actions. Meaning it does not nullify your Islam. Same thing with these narrations here in your books, everyone. If you see one harming his neighbor, that's disbelief of the action, not of the belief. Of the belief will remove you from the fold of Islam. As we know, you have 2 types of hypocrisy. You have hypocrisy of the actions, and you have hypocrisy of the what? Of the belief. The hypocrisy of the belief, you're not even Muslim. meaning that he totally, in his heart, doesn't believe in Islam at all. He's just pretending. Initially, that person is what? Not Muslim. Then you have nifaq, you have hypocrisy of the actions. Hypocrisy of the actions meaning that if a person if he speaks, he lies. Do we know that a lie to remove someone from the fold of Islam? Rather, he fell into what, everyone? A major sin. However, the Messenger of Allah still called it nifaq, a hypocrisy. But it's not a hypocrisy that removes you from the fold of Islam. It's a hypocrisy of the actions. Same here. Same here, what we mentioning of what they call of harming your neighbor, so we can drift too far off away from the topic of the narration in your books. That harming your neighbor is what? Kufr of the amal, of the actions, not of the faith. If you understand these principles, you will be able to refute the people of takfir. So you won't fall into it. Or to protect my sisters, don't marry a man that has these principles mixed up, and then you marry a man that's upon takfir. Keep in mind, brothers and sisters, that the only people who are sound, and what we're speaking about now, is the Salafiyin wa Ahlul Haq. No one else. All the other deviant sects are inclined to takfir. All of them. The only one who's truly sound in these matters are Ahlul Sunnah. No one else. طيب. Wow, it's 5 o'clock already? So, this narration, when the Messenger of Allah mentions about if you believe in Allah in the last day, do not let him harm his neighbor. Do not let him harm his neighbor. We said that the negation of faith in these narrations are for the completeness of faith, not for the foundation of faith. And I'll give the one example of the Quran also. We go back to the book of Allah now. I want everyone to sum up. We can basically make everything concise, what I'm about to say now. Make it just straight to the point, bang. By saying this, all these narrations, especially which is mentioned in it, of major sins, all, as they say, Ahl Sunnah yasuqunahu sawqan wahidan. The Ahl Sunnah, that they narrated in a one manner, which is that these narrations are conveyed to show that they're major sins and that they will negate completeness of faith, not the origin of it. And if you understand that point, khalas, we'll stop there and we'll move on. There's more details than that, but I don't want to confuse anyone. For example, I'll give one more example so we can test everyone, give everyone a test. Allah says in his book, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Another ayah. Allah says in his book, by your Lord they will never believe. They will not believe until they make you, Muhammad, the judge in all their affairs. Then they will never find in their chests any type of haraj, any type of aversion, or any type of reluctancy, or any type of hesitancy in this matter, or being hesitant and accepting what you have judged, and they submit wholeheartedly. If you go back to why that ayat was revealed, it was revealed about two Sahaba who were disputing. They were disputing in a particular matter pertaining to the garden, a particular garden. So the ayat was revealed talking about a certain act that was done, not about negation of a person being a kafir. It was regarding about an act. Notice I said act. I didn't say belief. Act. So one of the Sahaba became upset of what was judged, and then the ayat was revealed. So is anyone now going to declare that particular Sahabi to be a kafir? Hasha wa kalla. No one would declare any of that Sahaba that was mentioned here, or that Sahabi, or that companion. He wasn't. But however, Allah wanted to teach and sent down the ayat to saying that what? That your faith will not be complete until you have made Muhammad a judge of all your affairs. Then you will never have any aversion of what he's judged, and they submit wholeheartedly. So the affair was talking about an action, wasn't talking about faith. So this ayat was talking about what, everyone? About one's faith being complete, not negated. Is it clear what I'm saying? I have to speak to the sisters about Aqeedah and Minhaj. You have to. So I'm taking this opportunity to teach my sisters Minhaj and the Aqeedah also at the same time. Let's both mean the same thing. Minhaj and Aqeedah is the same thing. But anyway. So is it clear what I'm saying? So when you hear these ayats, brothers and sisters, if you hear these ayat, you'll know that the ayat is speaking about what? It's speaking about these particular narrations, and the ayat to the book of Allah is talking about the negation of complete faith, not what? The origin of faith. The only way, and we'll give an exception to it, the only way that these narrations can now be flipped and saying that it's talking about the origin of faith, if a person makes these affairs halal. That's something different. We'll talk about that later. But we're talking about a person whose belief is sound. If sound and his foundation is there, then these narrations remain upon its origin, which is what? The negation of completeness of faith, not the origin of it. Is it clear, everyone? Jayyid. The second matter, what we want to talk about this narration, is what type of harm. Notice the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلَا يُؤْذِي جَارَهُ فَلَا يُؤْذِي جَارَهُ. Let him not harm his neighbor. Notice the Messenger of Allah did not use the word darar. He used the word adiyah, or what they call idha. Idha. Idha is a little bit more in depth than just darar. Darar. Darar means harm, of course. But adiyah or idha is on another level. You'll find that the great Imam Ibn Uthaymeen even gave a great explanation to this. He says that the Messenger of Allah talked about and used the word adiyah, besides using the word darar. He said, why? Because adiyah can be something that's the slightest type of what? Of something that your neighbor would be irritated from. So the Messenger of Allah used something a little bit more explicit and more in depth to let you know how much you're supposed to not or abstain from what? Of harming your neighbor. Meaning, let's just say you might light something or some smoke, or light something that would maybe creep in his house and the smell would irritate him. Or loud voices that would disturb him. Or certain movements that are loud. And even the great Imam, even Sheikh Salih Fawzan even mentions that too. He says quickly in his explanation, he said, فَلَا يَجُوزُ لِلْجَارِ أَن يُؤْذِيَ جَارَهُ بِأَيِّ نَوْعٍ مِنْ أَنْوَاعِ الْأَذَى كأن يتكلم عليه ويسبه أو أن يتسبب له بضرر كأن يستعمل في بيته ما يؤذي جاره من رفع الأصوات أو كثرة الحركات التي تقلق الجيران وأشد من ذلك أن يستعمل في بيته المنكرات التي تؤذي الجار كرفع أصوات الأغاني والمزامير. He says that it is not permissible for the neighbor to harm his neighbor with any type from the different types of adha, meaning by speaking or insulting him or cursing at him or using profanity or using any type of unacceptable speech. Or being a reason or a cause for him being harmed. For example, that you use in your house that was something on purpose that you would utilize to harm your neighbor by raising and shouting your voices or doing an abundance of movements that will worry or that would irritate your neighbor. And he said what is more severe than that. Now listen to what he goes on to say. What is more severe than that? It's more severe than that. That you use in your house types of evil that you shouldn't be indulged in the first place, such as harming your neighbor by raising your voice with singing and music. With singing and music. Or harming your neighbor by pungent smells. Oh, and now listen, he goes on, he gives a lot of good examples. Well, Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah, he says, or that you utilize something in your house that it may transgress or goes beyond your house and it will what? Trickle in his house. For example, that you might plant a plant or a tree that extends, meaning it's he said that the tree or the actual branches of the tree will extend to the point where it will harm your neighbor. Or, for example, irritating noises by using, for example, machines that causes loud noises that will also likewise irritate him. Or, he gives a lot of examples. Or peeking in or spying on your neighbor. He said, أن يطل على جاره وينظر خلال الجدران أو من خلال النوافذ ويتطلع إلى عوراته أو يستمع إلى جاره ماذا يقول كل هذا من أنواع من الأذى. He says, or you try to peek in or try to peek in and listen or look at your neighbor. Or spy on him. Or you try to look at him behind a wall. Or behind windows. Or try to look into his privacy. Meaning of what is considered from hiding or covering one's body. Meaning looking at his outer. Looking at them while they're naked or something that's private. Or listening to them. Or listening to your neighbor. What is he saying? What are they saying? All this is the various types of harm that the Messenger of Allah has prohibited. And he said it's mamnu' mutlaqan. It's prohibited in all cases. Now listen to what this last part, the great Imam, that he says, Hafidhullah, because I want everyone to listen to this. He says, وَفِي حَقِّ الْجَارِ مِنْ بَابٍ أَوْلَى لأن الجار له حق حتى ولو كان كافرا كيف إذا كان الجار مسلما. He says if this is the neighbors for all the more reason. He said the neighbor, this is his right even if he's a kafir, even if he's not Muslim. Then how much so will it be if the person was Muslim? And if he was Muslim, he was your relative. So that is the second affair that we were speaking about now. We'll stop here, inshallah. You want some more? You can have some more. Is it clear, everyone, in the lesson so far what I'm saying? Jayyid. That's the most important thing. طيب, we'll stop here. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Any questions about the lesson?